I've got some questions here. We also have a mic that can be used out there, so you don't even have to get up and show yourselves to the rest of us in order to ask a question. But I've got a few here just to start the ball rolling. If we go back in the same order, I suppose. I've got a question from Sally Ibbotson from Friends of the Earth, who says, why can't Brent do plastic recycling, not just bottles, as does Hertfordshire, Harrow and many other boroughs, not beginning with H presumably. And another person has just said more recycling bins for plastics. So how can we get plastics, because we get an enormous amount of plastics?
Yeah. You'll be pleased to hear that come the autumn you will be able to recycle many more forms of plastic. It's to do with our contract. Our contract was originally with Viola was to recycle bottles, and you have to recycle. We have to sort of set your recycling program according to the facilities to recycle them. If they're not out there to do the recycling, there's no point in collecting them. But come the autumn, there'll be new recycling, be a new waste contract, which will include recycling trays and other forms of plastic, which I know annoy me. So I suspect by the autumn I'll have even a smaller carrier bag as end waste, because that's all I put out now. But that is coming, together with extra recycling for flats and streets that don't have organic. That will all be coming in the autumn.
Okay, recycling, that is not actually recycling the flats, but yeah, extra recycling for flats. Meaning people in flats will be able to recycle. Sorry. To the others, do you want to come in on that?
No, I mean, I welcome the fact that we are going to get it in the autumn, and I think that has been partly due to pressure of people like yourselves who are in the audience. So, you know, I would welcome that.
Right.
The only thing I would add is just making sure that we make everybody aware of where there are central recycling facilities as well. Not everybody knows there's various recycling bins tucked away on places like Chapter Road, for example. There is quite a lot of recycling facility in Wilson, but not everybody knows where it is. So one of the things we're looking at is how we can get greater publicising of that information.
Well, that actually leads on to the next question, which is from somebody called Tanya, who says, can we have more recycling points, i.e. at Sainsbury's, so that recycling is easier for people who live on the high road?
For some reason, Sainsbury's completely took away all their recycling bins. It wasn't down to us. It was some complaints that the manager had from residents, I think, but they were removed, nothing to do with the council. It's a great pity, because that was an ideal site for recycling. You can do some here at the back of the library, as Gavin says. There are some streets with recycling facilities. They have to be careful where we put them, so that it's not going to be a nuisance to people. Can you imagine a bottle bank right in the middle of a housing estate? Very noisy, wakes people up. So you've got to be sensitive to that kind of situation.
My immediate reaction is that, again, I don't know whether we can negotiate anything with Sainsbury's. It might be worth looking at them. But you know, again, that to me is a suggestion, which, like a lot of suggestions we get, we take away and look into. So as I'm going to see the Sainsbury's manager about something else, I'm going to... Yes, yeah. Well, no, not just watering the plants, but perhaps getting more plants, because they own the property outside, which is another way of greening Wilston, by the way. More plants helping to make the place look green.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing from that is if Sainsbury's have responded to complaints about the recycling, well, go and complain to Sainsbury's that there isn't recycling, because then if they're sensitive to that, then maybe you can make them change their policy back again. Yeah.
I think one of the problems with the previous Sainsbury's recycling was they did have problems with vermin, apparently. I think that happened because there weren't proper systems in place for actually collecting the recycling regularly. So I think we all just need to bear in mind that when we set up recycling facilities, that we also make sure that we set up the necessary infrastructure to make sure it actually gets collected regularly.
Right. There was a question that came up earlier for Sarah Tether, which really was in your area, so I'm going to put it to you. it's about the green boxes. Where is the recycling rubbish going, and how is it sorted? And what's yeah.
Well, yes, it was something that I asked, because I used to have responsibility for environment, and I did ask, where does it go? Because I don't want our rubbish landing in China or any other, or a third world country that's supposed to get rid of it. And I was satisfied that we were recycling in a sustainable way, in a people-friendly way.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that, I agree with Leslie, is that very often, you know, on a lot of these topics, and listening to some of the questions that have been asked, some of you here have far more technical expertise than certainly I have, and I'm hearing ums either side of me as well. This is partly your own. We're not saying, you know, it's all up to you, but you need to bring the information, which in fact Friends of the Earth and Grant Campaign Against Climate Change have been very good at doing, to us to help with decision making and whether we agree with the decisions the council makes. So yes, there are a lot of us aware of these questions that you raise, but we do need, as Gavin was saying earlier, you know, it's a partnership here. So please do keep up your pressure from expertise as well.
So, are there questions from members of the audience? Is anybody there who would like to raise a question for the councillors now? If not, then they're entirely satisfied. Oh, somebody at the front here. Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah. Hold in there.
Reducing plastic. That should be. Okay. Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
I agree with you about reducing the use of plastic, because of course that reduces the demand for oil, and of course that's linked with the Iraq war and Libya and so on, but I didn't go into that. I'm interested in this new contract in autumn. What is this new contract? You said something about Veolia. Who is it with? Does it automatically go to Veolia, and how long is the contract?
Well, Veolia is our contract at the moment, and I think legally we have to sort of renegotiate a contract with them to make the changes that we're having to make. Some changes we've had to make because we're so short of money this year. And it's lost so much of our funding that some streets, for example, were three times a week clean. They could be 2 times a week clean. We've had to make that kind of adjustment. Sorry, was it the wind? But it had to be negotiated with Veolia. We're buying a whole set of new bins, so all your recycling will go into one wheelie. That's in a paper, plastic, everything. So because it'll be sorted at depots, but you won't have to sort it yourself.
But how long is the contract? The original contract was finishing in 2014?
Yes, it was. I think it was about three years of the original contract.
So it's just for the current contract?
Yes, we have to renegotiate details, and we did it to save money. You know, we've also sort of got details in the contract to save money because of the cuts we're having to manage.
Right. Do you want to take a supplementary on that, or is that
just to show Brent Council that in the past they had their own trucks, their own recycling and so on, but now it's all been privatised.
Sorry. Yeah, Leslie's saying that the Conservative group sold the site to Veolia a long time ago. So so we're stuck with Veolia, and I know there are lots of there are questions about Veolia as well. For all sorts of other reasons. So, yeah.
I'll just add one extra point. We are keen to get as many new recycling facilities as we can to people, but one of the difficulties we do have is communicating with residents about how they should be recycling. And while the council, I think, is doing everything it can to make it as simple as possible, we do have a lot of transient people. We do have a lot of people where English isn't their first language. Making people aware of what the recycling facilities are and why it's important that they should use them is something I think we all need to be involved in. And certainly if anybody listening has suggestions about how we can better communicate to residents what they need to do in respect of recycling, we're very much open to thoughts on that, because I think effective communication is a crucial part of actually making recycling work.
Okay, Anne wants to come in.
I agree with that very much. And there was somebody who was sitting where Liz is sitting at the moment this morning, who's had to go on to Brent Cross, who wanted me to raise this very point about how you get people in flats, for example. While I agree that, you know, we've got to look at better ways, I live in a complex where there are 54 flats, and you know, I'm sorry, people sometimes call me naive, but I'm a great believer in actually talking one-to-one. If you catch somebody doing something like putting their newspaper in a plastic bag in the recycling, have the conversation. So I agree that it's, as well as what the council can do, as well as what pressure groups can do, never diminish the power of having a conversation.
Right. Are there any more questions? Yeah, that's a couple of people in the audience. Gentleman there in the dark. Oh no, we go with gentleman here with the hat. Yeah.
Hello there. I was interested in what you said about the wheelie bins being replaced and recycling being made easier. I like the sound of that. It sounds great. One concern of mine was that when you said that, I immediately thought, what happens to all those hundreds of thousands of wheelie bins that are now redundant, and is there a mechanism for taking care of that?
I'm sure, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I'm sure there is, because we can't waste money like that.
Of course, yeah.
We can't. Most people will probably not have many more bins, than, well, perhaps one more than they have now. But I mean, I'd like to get rid of my grey residual rubbish bin, because I only have a little plastic bag full each week. It's a waste.
It's true.
But I'll take that back. I will find out.
I'd really rather, personally speaking, continue to separate my own waste and not see a million redundant wheelie bins. But obviously,
I'll give you my card afterwards, and I can come back with you with an answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If anything to add on that?
I mean, there has been an ongoing controversy, which Friends of the Earth and Brent campaign. So, I mean, it is something which is on the council agenda. So I did. That was. You saw me become party political at that point. You know, much as we get on, there are times when we do separate. So, but Leslie again has said she'll take it back. So.
Anything to add? No. Gentleman with the sunglasses and his t-shirt. Steffi, we need Steffi. It's all right. The gentleman next to you would like to ask a question. Yeah.
I just have a question regarding cycling, because you mentioned there's going to be some money allocated to build some cycle routes. Just wanted to know any details already on location of these routes, because I run a small website and an environmental group that does cycling as well, and a lot of the members trying to get to work, for example, cycling from here to central London, they found out that most of the three big routes that are from Brent to central London, Kensal Rise being one, and then the one via Queen's Park, and then the one via Kilburn, have almost no cycle lanes or very little facilities for somebody to cycle on those busy roads. And it was a concern, and also something that puts people off seriously into trying to travel to work. Yeah. So just wanted to know if there's any details on that.
I think that's why there was a bid put in, because Brent, I agree with you, is a bit behind in terms of cycling provision. But we've only just got this money, only literally in weeks, and it will be up to the highways and engineers to decide how to spend it. But there's certainly things that we can take back, that there are concerns about the lack of routes through to central London in Brent. I think it's a very fair point.
And Leslie's right, we've only just got this money, but again, just as we will be badgering the people to, well, I say badgering, perhaps that's the wrong term, we will be putting in ideas. Again, it's up to you. I know, because residents have raised the issue with me, so if you're representing cyclists, then badger, it's really James Powney, isn't it? His department, and Jim Mower really, and also you know, our own transport spokesperson Daniel Brown. In other words, you know, you contact direct as well as working through councillors, but it is an issue which a lot of residents have raised, so all three of us are aware of that.
I suspect there will be some consultation.
Yeah, as Leslie was saying, that we will be consulting on that. The two key principles are really, we need areas where there's demand for cycling, but we also need areas where it can realistically be made safe and effective. I think one of the trouble with cycle lanes recently is they've been rather aspirational, and people have sort of thought that if you paint a couple of lines on a road, you know, that makes it a cycle lane, even if there's parked cars and fast moving traffic and heavy vehicles all over the place. So the two criteria are really where there's going to be demand for cycling, and that may be, for example, places near Willesden Green Tube, near key transport hubs, but also areas where there's ways of actually making it safe, ideally by isolating the cycle lane from the rest of the road. So again, as Anne and Leslie were saying, if you have suggestions, if you have ideas, do feed them onto us, and we will take them up on your behalf.
I can say, as chair of Brent Cyclists, part of the London Cycling Campaign, I can also say that the money for cycling for the biking boroughs is probably not going to be enough to build, you know, lots of new segregated cycle paths or anything like that. It's not enough for those sort of high cost projects. But there will be, separate from that, there is also the cycle superhighways, which will come probably along the A40. So that will be another route into central London, and as well as I would say, and we have been talking to Mike Evans, who's the cycling officer for Brent, who was here earlier. It's a good idea if you want to get more pressure put on about changing things. If you join London Cycling Campaign, come along to Brent Cyclists meeting, and then, you know, we can actually have a concerted campaign on those sorts of things. Yeah? Okay, any other questions from members of the audience? Because we're sort of up to the end of our allotted time, so and we've had a good range of questions. Is there any last thing that you'd like to say, each of you? I mean, no last thing now. I mean, last thing in the rest of your life, obviously.
Yeah, I know we're from different groups.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, the world is about to end today, so it's a bit late. So.
Get your comment in.
Yeah.
We are, though we're from different group parties, we are committed to make Willesden as good as we can and to do our best for Willesden Green. So I think that's true of all three of us.
I'll tell you what I wanted to say. I agree very much, Leslie. You can see that. Yes, there are differences, but as far as Willesden's concerned, all three of us are in there. Steffi, who is there with the microphone, is the person who actually put the idea of the Green Fair to us and has done the major bulk of the organisation. So I would just like to say thank you, Steffi.
I'd just like to echo those thanks and say we've really enjoyed this, and it's really good that we've been able to sort of take questions directly from people and hear what you've had to say. So yeah, thank you very much to all of you for attending and putting your points to us. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for the councillors now. And we are going to move on, I think, quickly because we're over time, but what we would like to do is the auction. Yeah? So, yeah.